So I'm very pleased to have Vincent, my gay friend here. That's how you're described, Gay Vincent. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I didn't, I, that's not how come out of the gate. But when you are gay and you have an effeminate voice, that's what people give you out of the gate, and that's all they want to know you for. And that's the first, you know, uh, that's the first kind of attachment that they give to you, and that's what's
Yeah, and
most.
hopefully it'll get people to watch as well. Like, oh, there's a gay guy this time. Oh, it's a bit different to maybe a Christian guy who might be gay as well. But anyway, just to make it entertaining, so entertaining in some way. But Vincent has got a lot more to offer than just being gay, isn't that right, Gay? I mean, Vincent.
Yes, yes, hopefully.
Okay, so yeah, I always like to be inappropriate as I introduce my guests. It's a lot more fun than being boring and serious. Um, so let's quickly do super quick introductions, get over and done with. So I'm a Muslim. I like to do happiness classes for non-Muslims. Why do I introduce it like that? Because you don't have to believe what I've got to say. Hopefully, what I've got to say is logical, scientific, based on psychology and stuff like that. I'm a British guy who's recently moved to Jordan. I'm saying that because I hardly ever talk about my background, which is currently this is my garden. I won't say too much about it. Somebody said, "Why is Khalid hiding in a bush last time?" I said, "Oh, a bush? What are you talking about?" So, like, that's a lemon tree, but you probably can't see it. And then there's a barbecue, and then there's kind of like up there is like this roof made out of grapevine. So there's a lot of fun and interesting things there. So I'm in Jordan, next to Israel, the nice hot spot, all over the news at the moment. Vincent, tell me something about yourself. There's always so many interesting things about yourself, but anything that you like to say about yourself?
Well, I mean, on topic of what we're going to be talking today about, I almost feel as though I was just born naturally a pagan. I think that that was like my natural set, like my natural where I came out as.
How would you
And
describe a pagan, though? What does that mean? Like literal idols
yeah,
worshipping, or what does that
I
mean?
was always well, I think that iconism and animism and believing that there's like something alive and rocks and trees and
Mm,
water and things like that. I think I naturally thought like that. Um, I think
okay,
that's
but
not.
maybe okay. That's interesting because I wouldn't disagree with you that there's life behind all of these things, even these apparently inanimate things. Like, and nature seems to be alive in its own way, even if it's a cloud. It seems to be working on a system, and according to the Islamic idea, it's definitely got a rushing power behind it, the way God describes in the Quran. Like the Quran describes the universe as a glass palace behind which there's a rushing power of God. So everything has a living power behind it. So maybe there's not a contradiction between our beliefs.
Well, I think the thing is that, I mean, if you're a Muslim, you would have to believe, and you believe rocks are conscious. You couldn't believe that God is in that rock. Um, Whereas, I don't even know if I really believe these things, but if I were to be spiritual, um, I would prefer that there was a God, not God, a God in the rock. So, and I've never really come across Muslims that believe clouds are conscious.
I wouldn't say I don't know if you talk about conscious, but there's a power behind them. Whether you want to say they're actually conscious, but there's some sort of power, living power behind them, because they seem to be doing an amazing job, like clockwork, recycling our water. There's so many amazing systems that like people don't seem to appreciate how amazing they are. Like, did you know? Like when you blow a bubble and it's like floating in the air and it's very
Yeah,
thin, right? Okay.
yeah.
Did you know the thinness of the bubble is like the thinness of the Earth's atmosphere? Like, it's so delicate, and we live in such a delicately fine-tuned planet. And if you start seeing the world like that, then you'd be like, oh, this word really is alive in some way. Maybe it might not say ow when you poke a droplet or something, but there's something very alive about it for it to be working in such an amazing way.
Well, I don't know what that I don't know. I mean, whatever your definition of alive is, I mean, you're saying something can be alive without being conscious and self-aware. You know, obviously a Muslim is not going to believe that an idol is self-aware or conscious, or that a god is inhabiting the idol or the cloud or the rock or anything like that, unless you're a Muslim who believes in demons, and then you might believe a
No.
demon is inhabiting it.
Well, actually, you said something. Okay, fair. Yeah, you're right. That's not what Muslims believe. We don't believe that, like, the wood, I don't know, pieces of paper are suddenly alive and they do something. But there is a power behind them that makes them do all these amazing things that keep our life support system on this planet working, right? But you said something interesting that I was thinking about, and I was like, the fundamental of this very topic. You said, like, you don't know if you necessarily even believe in a god. So I don't want to spend too much time on that because I do want to stay on topic. But there is like the number one step. Like, just want to ask you, do you believe in a living, conscious designer, creator of the universe, or creators of the universe, something that's alive that is a god, that would generally be described as a god or gods?
I would believe in gods, but I would prefer to believe either the universe, okay, the material universe is God and God is uncreated. And so
No, I'm not talking about
we,
the nature of God yet. I'm just checking. Oh, so it sounds like you do
well,
believe
I
there
would
is a
believe that.
conscious
I don't
God.
know if there was a creation. You're asking me if they created. I don't know if there was a creation.
Oh,
There
okay.
may,
So,
just as
okay.
God has always been, there may have been no creation. Just as God has
Oh, I
always
see. Yeah,
been,
yeah,
God
sure.
is uncreated, and the universe, I'm saying, could be uncreated,
Sure.
even if it
Forever
contains
existing.
gods forever
Forever
existing.
existing. Yeah, sure. There's a word for that. What's that word? Is there a word for it? Forever existing? There's a word.
I forgot. I
Yeah, I
forgot.
forget. I forget all these good words. Anyway, so I just want to check. So I had another way of phrasing the same question to be sure. Do you believe that all the fine tuning of the world and our existence, and we're basically robots, and inside are even more robots, like super tiny ones, right? Do you think that came about by a bunch of accidents? Because I'm just trying to check the fundamental. Or do you think there was an intelligence behind this creation, whether it being perpetually always existing? I can't remember the word is. Or what do you think? What's your
There's
feeling?
there's a book called Biochemical Predestination. I forget the author. I'm actually going to make a blog about this. Biochemical predestination is the concept that nature, by the laws of the universe, chemicals are naturally created by the laws of the universe to evolve into life. We know that if you take and you recreate the primordial soup of the earth and you flash it with electricity, it starts creating amino acids, which are the building blocks of life. You know, they do that. It's not random.
So it sounds like you don't believe in a consciousness that created everything or the order in the universe.
Well, I would believe that that consciousness. I don't believe in free will. So the point is that I wouldn't believe that God has free will if he is conscious. Um so did he actually create the he would need to have free will in order to actually
Okay,
create.
so you don't believe in God in the general, normal, the average person's idea of God.
Well, I did want to bring up. I'm not. The thing is that this was prior to the Abrahamic religions. My thinking was a little bit more what everyone was thinking. The Greeks believed that the gods descended out of chaos. It wasn't really a consciousness. It really wasn't a god. It was just the soup. And the gods came out of it. And I know you don't want to talk much about Mormonism this time, but Mormonism, which I believe is a white atavistic religion and a return to white polytheism and materialism, would say that God is bound by the physical laws of the universe. So God might be in the biochemicals that are, or the chemicals that are organizing into amino acids, but I don't necessarily know if he has the free will to basically do whatever he wants with it, or is he basically a consciousness that is a slave, but this slave is naturally bound to evolve into the
Just
living
another
being.
law of nature or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I made a mistake already. I always make mistakes. The first thing I really want to start off with, besides saying you're gay and stuff like that, is what's the point of this conversation? How has this got anything to do with happiness, right? I want to quickly point that out by showing my screen a little bit as well, my document. So I won't be showing it all the time, but I don't think I will. But I just want to remind people, check all the arguments that basically I'm going to lay out roughly are summarized with references in the description. There's a link to the document, the one I'm showing you right now. And so here's a question: what difference does it make our conception of God? Okay, so the difference it makes is that you can see, for example, if you want to take this as an example, Palestinians, okay, their idea of God, okay, is so strong in their minds that they believe it so much because it's so realistic, I would say. An all-powerful God that takes care of and all of this kind of stuff, that when their children die, they go, it's God's will, that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, we've got people in the West who believe in sort of, what's it called? Uh, Buddhism and sort of ideas that I don't think anybody takes seriously. And these new age
People take it seriously. Don't tell people they don't take their religion seriously.
No, the reason why I say they don't take it seriously, because relatively, those kind of people, the Western kind of new age philosophy of new age ideas of God, I'll tell you why they don't take it seriously very quickly. But the practical result is they get depressed, and every tiny thing that happens is like the end of the world. So you can see there's a kind of Abrahamic understanding of God. When I say Abrahamic, I think Christianity doesn't really count because they don't really follow the original one God idea. But that's a lot more believable. And the reason when it's more believable and it's realistic, that makes sense, then you can have some firm faith in it, that there's a plan to the universe, there's a reason for everything that's happening, and you feel a lot more stronger. So what I'm trying to say briefly is that the more realistic your belief in God, that you genuinely, it makes sense to the average person, not like three gods is one, like nobody understands that, right? So that's the Trinity, by the way. So if you don't believe it, you can't follow it. And if you don't follow it, you don't have any confidence, and then you can't really be happy. And the practical result is you won't be happy. Every tiny thing will knock you off your feet in life. How do you feel about that idea?
Well, I do believe that the Abrahamic God does make you happier, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily true. So in America, there was a book written by a guy named Norman Vincent Peale, and it was called The Power of Positive Thinking. And it was basically Christian positive thinking. And it's just these like affirmations: God loves you, you're going to get through, God's there for you. And the thing is that Donald Trump used this when he was $1 billion in debt in the city. Now, if you actually believe this, that God's there for you and everything's going to be fine and nothing's going to be wrong, and you wake up thinking this every day, you are going to be happier. The problem is that it does lead to irrationalism, and that these people, when they face a problem, when something does go wrong, which they weren't expecting, they have something inside of them that's just able to ignore that and say, I don't know why they can ignore it. It didn't work. So, they woke up making these affirmations every day and it didn't work. But I do believe that simply if you wake up every day and you don't know if there's a God there that's going to take care of you and make sure that everything is fine, then yes, you are going to be more depressed. That doesn't mean you're wrong. Happiness doesn't mean that you're right. I mean, if you're on drugs, you're going to be happier while you're on drugs than when you're off of them, but you're going to be not as lucid about
So
reality.
I would say that just these affirmations that I am worthy of love, I'm a good person, blah blah blah, it doesn't work because you can see that's a Western practice, and you can see they're the most depressed, so it doesn't work. And there's another kind of version of that which Jordan Peterson tried or tries. Okay, which is I act as if I believe in God. That doesn't work either. You either believe or you don't. Like if you're lying to yourself, if you say God is an old man with a big beard in the sky, that's just not believable. Like, how is an old man all powerful and everywhere at the same time, managing the whole universe? It doesn't make sense, right? So I'm saying what we're going to discuss here are ideas that make sense to us. I'm going to suggest what the
It
Quran
makes
says in
sense to
4 verses.
you, not to me. It makes sense to you.
Sure, exactly. To me, that's what I'm gonna suggest these logical ideas, and you can tell me if they're not logical or not. So the initial point is that first of all, it's good to have a idea of God that we can take seriously, because then makes us happier because we know how the world works and all this kind of stuff, right? Um,
Well, but we're not all going to agree on that.
Oh, we
That's
don't have to. I never expect anybody to necessarily agree. In fact, I pick people like yourself and who have very different opinions, so that people can, so you can show, like, explain the different ideas and let people choose for themselves what is most logical from our debates. So one interesting point is in the West, we've realized, I think this is an interesting idea, we're beginning to realize that we need a God of some sort. People are turning back to spirituality from atheism because they realize something is missing. Would you agree with that? That in the West, we're beginning to realize we need religion or a God of some sort?
Well, I think most people are weak-minded, and yes, I think most people need it, and I think unfortunately, most people are really not able to handle, um, the idea that there's not someone there making sure everything's fine and everything's the way it's supposed to be. It's not so much that it's the problem is that yes, the majority of people need God, and it's only the minority who don't. But just because it's not working doesn't mean that number one, God is real. Number two, if let's say that we found out that they call it the God gene. Let's say there was a God gene, and these people who have the God gene are prone to believe in God, and they need God. So if you bred out the God gene, then maybe we wouldn't need God. But also, well, we'll talk about that in a bit. But what
Yeah.
kind of God? Because if you believe in a materialistic God, then man can be God.
Sure. Okay. Let's because I asked you, do you believe in a God? And I think you basically said you don't because it's unrealistic just now,
No,
right?
I didn't say that believing in God is unrealistic. I just said that I don't know if I believe in God. I don't know if God exists.
Okay, I'm just going to give you one or two basic ideas to talk about this very fundamental thing before we talk about the nature of God. It doesn't make sense to talk about the nature of God if we don't even we have too many doubts, like if God exists or not. So very briefly, if you look at anything that's being created, right, like a phone, right,
Yeah.
we have no experience in the world where something complex that was put together, has all sorts of intricate parts working together for a purpose. We've got no experience where that happened by any sort of mistake. We can't assume that it happened by what we can call accidental Darwinian evolution. By the way, I believe in evolution. It just means things happen in stages. That doesn't mean that it happened by accident or a number of accidents, right? So is there any example that you've seen where things just come together, some sort of mechanical, electronic thing that just comes together by itself without a designer or a creator?
Well, it's not fair to use man-made things, because I mean, you can see a river, you can look at a canyon that's been dug out, and it's very intricate, and it's done, and you know, everything's smoothed out and has ripples in the you know, it's like an art piece of artwork. But an unconscious river, you know, did that mechanical movement. And so things that are not created by humans are examples of things that were created not by accident, but by deterministic forces. Things don't happen by accident, they happen out of necessity. It's called necessitarianism, meaning that this is the way things have to happen. Life has to evolve. The river has to flow the way that it flows, and it has to carve out the rocks in the way it does. It's not fair to
No, but
take.
okay, I mean that's not hardly mechanical, right? I'm thinking about like a clock or something like that, right?
But yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair to take something that's been created by a human and then relate it to the universe that's natural in a different way. I
I
mean,
think it's fair in the sense that we have to think of examples. We can't believe something happens when you've got no example of it that we know of that definitely works. Like if we saw loads of clocks being made by themselves, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that happened. We can believe that, you know, the nature made itself, right? But I don't think it's fair or realistic to. That's my first point. Our basic real knowledge of the world tells us that there's nothing that makes itself, right?
well,
Number two.
the physical world makes itself. The physical world, you're taking something where humans have mutated the laws of physics, and you're relating it to something that relies only on the laws of physics.
Okay, I mean, the laws of physics, basically, we're talking about science, and that's all we have to make rational choices about what's realistic, what's fact, what's fiction. Do you know what I mean? What's fairy tales? The other point I wanted to make was, okay, let's look at science again in a different way. Like, I'm not a science denier, right? So if you look at the second law of thermodynamics, which is about entropy, it essentially says if you leave something to itself, it will fall apart. Like we know that in our normal day-to-day experience. If I make a sandcastle one day and I leave it there, if I come back to it the next year, it'll probably be gone, bashed up or something, right? It definitely won't become a bigger sandcastle with people walking around it, right? Or like definitely won't become bigger and better. It would fall apart. That's the second law of thermodynamics called entropy. Things break down by themselves. The only way you can undo that or reverse that is with intelligence. Like this phone didn't come about by itself. Right now it's being, disappearing, but like that's our knowledge of the world through science and our experience that things don't come together by themselves. So when you realize how amazing all of the universe is, in fact, even if you look at your own, I don't know, and even your skin, and you start like contemplating it, you'd be amazed by how amazingly well it's designed. So that's my second point. So what do you think about that? That if you look at science, it will tell you God must exist.
Okay, give me. I just want to look up one thing. I want to make sure that I use the word.
Entropy was the
I
key word.
know, but
Okay.
Okay, so there's in science there's the concept of anti-entropy and anti-enthalpy. Look, when the Big Bang happened, everything ordered itself into a single dot. The whole universe ordered itself into a single dot, because basically, if I know what's going
Are you talking
on,
about the Big Bang? You're talking about
well,
the dot that you're talking about.
yes, but I don't believe that there was no existence before the Big Bang. There's other theories out there that the Big Bang is just a cycle of Big
Oh
Bangs that
yeah, I can
happen
believe that. Even the Quran
again and
believes.
again. But we
Yeah.
know from the last Big Bang, all of the universe ordered itself into one dot. So there is a believed law of anti-entropy. Now, we might not fully understand it, but it makes more sense to believe in a law of anti-entropy because we saw it happen than to believe that there needs to be
Why do you
intelligent.
think everything being sucked into a black hole? Because that's what you're basically describing, and
I
we
don't
do
know
have
if it all
black
got
holes.
sucked into a
Why is
black
it?
hole. I don't
No,
think it was a black hole. I don't think it was a black hole.
but
I don't think
that's what we know. That's the only mechanism we know
was it a
of that.
black hole, or was all the matter heated and created so much gravity because it was all concentrated in one area? I don't necessarily know it was a black hole, but even if it was a black hole, that doesn't necessarily negate the idea. Well, I don't see how that negates anti-entropy. I don't see how that negates
But
anti-entropy.
it's not anti-entropy for things to go into one place. By the way,
Everything into one place, all the universe into one place. That's not anti-entropy.
okay, so I'm going to say that's not an argument, because entropy, by my understanding of entropy, is that the reason why necessarily things fall apart is there are more ways of things going wrong than right by default, right?
Okay,
So
but
in
there's a
any
belief in the law of anti-entropy that would make sense because of the Big Bang, and we can see that it actually happened.
okay, cool. So as I say, you made a point, I made a point. People can see if they agree with your point or mine. It's up to them. And the third point, very briefly, if you simply look at the maths, okay, I like to point out blood as a drop of blood, right? People think blood, oh, it's really just some red stuff, right? They don't understand how complex it is, right? So just maybe people get put off by maths. I'll make it sound as simple as possible. If people don't understand it, I've done a video on this a couple of times in Speaker's Corner. There was mathematicians who were like, yeah, that definitely makes sense, even though they're atheists, right? About why God must exist, right? So very briefly, blood is made out of, I think they're called amino acid chains, okay? And for each link in that chain, there are 20 options, and it's made out of there's 4 chains, each made out of like 400, or I can't remember how many, right? Now, if you just multiply all the possibilities, so if you got one link connected to another link in the right order, everything has to be in the right order. That means 20 times 20, already on 400 different options, right? And if you keep doing that, you'll get a number I think is on the order of 10 to the power 700, right? That number is more trillions and trillions times more than the number of seconds the universe has existed. So even if you evolved every second, you wouldn't even be able to make one drop of blood. You wouldn't be anywhere near one drop of blood. In fact, you wouldn't be able to make one chemical called hemoglobin.
Yes,
So
but this is
basically, you'd have not enough time to make one drop of blood, not even one bit of blood, from the beginning of the universe. Mathematically, there's no chance. So
yeah,
you're
no,
believing in impossibilities.
you always use this. It's not impossible, it's improbable. But if the universe has been created zillions and zillions and zillions and zillions and zillions and zillions of times, eventually it's going to create a universe that acts like ours, and it'll actually repeat itself. The universe is created so many times that there will be an exact repetition eventually through just the draw of the lottery, through that this whole universe it'll happen so many times that everything will happen again. This conversation will happen again because the universe is created so many zillions of
That's
times.
actually an example for God existing, because
No,
imagine
it's not.
I made one phone, and you'd be like, oh, you got lucky, you made a phone, and then I made it again, and I made it again, and I made it again, right?
No,
That's
we're
just an
talking about
argument for it.
I'm talking about all the material in the universe coming together into one spot, perhaps. I don't even know if that's what really happened, through the laws of entropy, and then exploding in such a way. There's a zillion, trillion, bazillion ways it can explode. But if the universe is made a billion, quadrillion, zillion times, then eventually it's going to explode in the exact way that our universe has evolved. And yes, okay, have you ever heard of, okay, if you gave a zillion monkeys
Sure. Yeah.
typewriters,
Yeah.
eventually they would write out Shakespeare. It would just, if it happened a zillion times, and the
Agreed.
universe has been
Agreed.
created a zillion times, and
Sure.
so it eventually would fall just into place as it does now.
So
And
my answer is, first of all, the Quran talks about the universe being recreated. So that's not even against the idea of the Quran, that we will wrap it up and we will unwrap it, right? And then secondly, what I was talking about when I was talking about the existence of blood, like blood being created, that's when you say zillion times zillion times zillion, that is not even close to the complexity or the difficulty or impossibility of making blood.
don't say impossibility, say improbability. It's improbable.
No,
It's not
in normal
impossible.
people's language. So, for example, what's
No,
the
improbable and
probability
impossible.
of
I don't
you?
care what normal people language is. Use real scientific language.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't care.
it's 0.000, so many zeros that
Okay,
you
but it's
don't.
happened so many zillions of times, and you can't take that away. That if it
Sure.
happens enough times, that it would fall into place, and you just want to ignore that fact that this has
So
happened
just to
so
give,
many times.
because numbers are, some of these numbers are hard to really fully
Well,
appreciate.
it's
It's
been
like,
around forever,
no,
so
no.
it's
So
not
what
that
I'm talking
hard.
about, like just the example of blood. So I'm glad you pointed this out. The example of blood before we need to move on to the main thing. But the example of blood is if I got every time I tried to cross a road in my tiny village where there's hardly any cars, let's say, right? Okay, where there's basically no chance of me getting run over, I get run over every single time for the whole year.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not even near the number.
if this universe happened a zillion times, eventually, yes, that would happen. Just like monkeys would create Shakespeare and all this other kind of stuff. If you have it, it's you will never be able to say impossible. You will only be able to say improbable. And if the universe happens enough times, everything becomes possible. If it's 1 in a trillion zillion times, once the universe has been made 25 trillion zillion times, it's going to happen 10 times in a row.
Cool. Okay, so we both put arguments forward. Thank you very much for putting it as strongly as you possibly can. That's fantastic. Now, I want to talk about an interesting idea about the nature of God. What is the most realistic? Because that's what we want to talk about, like the most realistic God we can believe in. And we came to this title together about this idea of, is a supernatural God more or less logical than a natural God, something made from the universe? And then I thought about it. So, I can understand where Vincent is coming from, because when we say supernatural, we normally think like ghosts and made up stuff that nobody really believes, right? And nobody can even test if it's real. So I can see where the question is coming from. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to go through a fairly famous chapter of the Quran. I don't know, because you've been looking into the Quran a little bit. Do you know the verse of the Quran, 4 verses that talks about the nature of God, the basic definition of God? God is one. Everything comes from God. He's not created, or he's not a child or anything. Have you ever heard of that one? Surah Ikhlas?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to be going for the 4 fundamental attributes God must have to be God according to the Quran, and we're going to see if that's logical or not, right? And there was something else I wanted to point out, but I think I'll point it out when we come in later on, because I think there's a tendency in Westerners, they like the idea of everything being God and themselves becoming God, right? And I think that's an egotistical thing. Like we want to be, but we're going to talk about if that's realistic or not in a minute, right? So let's start off with the first statement of the Quran of this particular chapter, and it's saying God is one. Right? And why should we believe God is one? And you can tell me why not, right? Because I think your idea, I was looking to the Mormon idea, we can briefly touch on it, but there's not an agreement necessarily, because Mormonism is changing all the time. I think they're
Okay,
trying
yeah,
to
but they have,
revise it.
yeah. I
But
saw this what you have here. Scientists agree God must be one. That's totally not true. That's totally. Get me a consensus of scientists right now. Show me that article where all these scientists are saying God. This is a Muslim thing, because what you say, I'm sorry, you people are not able to work together on anything. So you say there couldn't have been a community of gods because then things wouldn't flow so well. White people can work together, so we can imagine a community of gods. This is nonsense. That scientists agree there must be one God.
cool. So do you understand, or do you agree that scientists are in the project, the physicians, whatever you want to call it, physics people, they believe that all there's a unified field theory. They believe all forces come from one force. You've heard of that, right?
Believe, but just because you can't see how that force reduces down further like atoms do, then I mean, just because we have no ability to detect that force, we have no ability to, at this time to test it, and this is all just conjecture. And these are people who, they take conjecture and they want to believe that God is one, and so they come up and they take a theory that's not even fully understood, proven, can't be tested at the moment, and say that this is, I'm not going to sit here and listen to something that's not hard and fast science to be used as an example of God being one.
Okay. So that's I suppose in a way, so that's one argument, but it might bleed into my second argument I was going to give, that there's another reason why God must be one. But okay, so my one argument is scientists or physics people, I don't think they're called physicians because that's a doctor, but what do they call it? People who study physics? Physicists, that's the one. Yes. Okay. So they generally are working on this project called the unified field theory, but basically they believe that looking at the order in the universe, there must be one source, and therefore that suggests if there's a God, there must be one God as well, right? From where all this, like you say, order comes from. So the other argument for this one God idea is that if there are lots of causes, there's causes and effects. Okay, if you had like 100 different effects, you would have to eventually you'd have to say this effect came from a cause before it and a cause before that, and it would have to lead eventually to one cause, not an infinite number of causes.
No, uncaused. God is uncaused, so the universe can be uncaused, especially if the universe is God. And it's not. That's like saying, like what you're using this unified field theory. That's like saying that that the quantum level proves free will, but also, Christians say it proves the Trinity because it seems that one can be many and many can be one. And the thing is that I side with the physicists who say that we don't have the brain structure and the perceptions to know what's going on, that there's something deterministic going on, but we just, not being able to make predictions on the quantum level doesn't mean the quantum level is unpredictable. None of this proves free will. This is just lapses in science that we don't understand, and they don't prove that God is one or that we have free will or anything like that. This is
sure. So all I'm saying is, okay, what we know of science, we can say, Ulrich is saying, science evolves and all this kind of stuff. There's always gaps in our knowledge, right? So we can't use the gaps for evidence. What we do is what we do know based on that, right? Because that's how we make computers. That's how we go about our daily lives, about what we do know. And what we do know, there's a unified, there's only a few laws and they seem to be all merging into one. That's one thing. But also, let's think, I think your key point, the key idea you have, one of the key ideas you have about God, okay, which I'll skip to, number 3, in this verse is God does not create child gods and is not a child of any other god, right? And this is another way of saying, essentially, there must be one ultimate cause. Now, you said that maybe there's an uncaused cause, like it goes on forever, right? And the reason why that doesn't logically make sense is because if you kept I think, what's the word? Infinite regress. Ever heard of that?
No, that you're talking about you're confusing it. No, you're not understanding. There is no infinite regress. God is uncaused. If God is the universe is uncaused. It's not infinite regression.
So there has to be, okay, the way I see it is that there must be a cause for all other causes, right? So you keep going back.
Is God caused? Who caused your God?
Nothing.
But only Allah is allowed to be uncaused. Everything else needs to follow this logic except Allah.
Okay.
So if I say it's more than one God, it makes no sense. But if you say it's one uncaused God, that only that makes sense. But anyone else who says that their area of belief is uncaused, it doesn't work. Only Allah works in that case. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, okay, let's say you've got Allah, right? And he decides to create a universe. That universe got created at a certain point in time, right?
You're
There was a
contradicting. You said the
beginning.
Quran says that the universe is just filtered and filtered and filtered and filtered.
I don't remember saying that. Can you
You
explain that
said that the
maybe?
Quran just says that we didn't have one big bang. It was many big
Oh,
bangs
no,
and
no, no. Well, I
cycles.
don't know about filtered and filtered, but yeah, there was a universe that was made, then it was wrapped up, I suppose in a black hole. It didn't say the word black hole, but it was rolled up, right? And then it would be recreated. So I don't know how many times it
Okay.
happened,
So
whatever.
if
Yeah.
God is uncreated and has no beginning, then he could have never created the universe, and or he could have, wherever he came from, it could have been created at the same time, or it just it I mean, it could be a mystery, just like God could be uncreated. He could have just always had the universe there at his disposal, and it was also uncreated because he wanted it to be uncreated. I mean, now once you get into these slippery metaphysics, anything becomes possible.
Okay, listen. So if you have a God who is the uncaused cause, at different points in time, he can create the universe. That's not complicated to understand. What I don't understand about your point of view is that you're saying that there's always cause and effect, and you're saying it's always perpetually
No,
existed.
I didn't say that.
Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Go on. Tell
I
me.
said that just as God is uncreated, there was no cause, there is no infinite regression. There's a law of uncreation, a scientific law of uncreation that also applies to God. And there's God is material, and that's it. And the material is uncreated. And I don't need to look for a infinite regression or some uncaused cause. It's just was like God uncreated.
Hmm.
A scientific law of uncreation.
Okay, so that's interesting. I've never heard of that. But just for people who don't understand what infinite regression means, it means like if you say that there was no beginning, maybe that's not what you're saying, right? Okay, you're saying there's no. If somebody claims that there was no beginning, that means the starting point keeps moving back, and then you never get to now.
Yeah, the
That's the
same thing
problem with that
happens if you have
fundamental idea.
Allah. Allah goes back forever and ever and ever. You think that there's
No, no,
only,
no, because we're not
and
trying to
also
find the cause of God.
infinite regression doesn't make any less sense than to say God always existed and is uncaused. So, I mean, what if the universe can move in reverse? Like, then there would be infinite regression. And, there's lots of unrealistic type of thinking that when you get into these metaphysical realms that go outside the laws of physics and science, you can just basically make anything. Yeah, the universe can go in reverse. Maybe the gods are being born in reverse, and it just goes back and back and back in time forever. Just like
Mm.
God can exist forever, God can go in reverse and forward at the same time. You know what I mean? Maybe God was created in the center of time and just expands into both directions. There's everything you can think of under the sun. It never ends. You can just come up with whatever you want.
So I'm just saying what we know of the universe and what makes sense, right? So you
But
made
what
your
we know
claim,
is
I
so
made mine.
little. We know so little.
Yeah. So we can't say based on our gaps in knowledge or the little that we know that we shouldn't make any have any ideas. Like what's the most realistic idea? So coming back to I don't want to repeat too many things. I've given certain ideas of why we should believe in God, and also what's some realistic ideas of why. Claire, why don't you, instead of WhatsApping me, you should put it on in the live chat. That's more interesting. So she said unmoved mover. She sent me a
No, I know
Wikipedia.
it could be unmoved movers as
Yeah,
well,
I mean that's what I
and
believe in.
also the universe itself can be God, and so it can be unmoved, an unmoved mover
Hmm.
itself. And I want to get into, since let's move past that part, let's move into
Yeah.
the practical applications. If you believe God is the physical universe, then you have one thing to worry about, and that is science. I don't worry about outside space and time, a magical place I can't ever know about. It's beyond my comprehension. I'll never ever know. I'm not focusing on that. I'm focusing, God is chemistry, God is mathematics, God is physics and biology. and let me focus on that. And that makes a more scientific society. That's why all the pagans invented the basis of science. I know that the Abrahamics came in and conquered and took over the science and added to it, but the cake was already made and they just put the icing on. There's a reason why the pagans created all the math and the, you know, all that other kind
They
of
basically
stuff.
barely did anything. Yeah, anyway.
No, that, excuse me, these pagans were
Coded
much.
algebra, who created our number system,
No,
everything.
excuse me, that was all created before the Arabs came, before Islam came along. The Hindus, you stole the Hindu Arabic algebra system, and then you said, well, we made it. And that's what you do with everything. You steal everything that other people make, and then you claim that you made it. You're 1400 years old. Like, get over yourself. You didn't create math. You didn't create math.
Okay.
Math was
Yeah.
around and astronomy was around way before you, way before you. And you might have improved it a little bit, but as I said, the cake was already baked and you put icing on the cake and then you say, look what we did for the world. You know what I mean? Look what the world did for you that you siphoned off of them. But the point is that yes, I do encourage white people to remain as not polytheistic materialists, because then you're not Oswald Spengler, who was a philosopher about the decline of the West and what would happen to the West and how we would get destroyed. One of his things says that, you know, people would start fleeing from the material and start getting into all these esoteric, immaterialist, weird philosophies, and that we would collapse because we would.
So let's hear a practical, your visualization or understanding of God. You can talk about your Mormon idea. Is it that we as human beings become God? Is that one of the ideas?
Well, we can be God. We can become God, maybe. If everything is God, then yes, human beings are God. But I don't understand why that's so egotistical, because what's the difference between saying you're a human being and between saying you're God? If God is the material universe and then I'm trapped by the material universe, I'm not all powerful, I'm under control. What is so egotistical?
Sure. So
about
okay, here's one of the problems that the Quran points out in the second verse of this particular chapter. There's only 4 verses. It says Allah is independent of anything and everything is dependent on him. So if we are all gods, we are all dependent on something else, right? We're not independent. So that makes us very terrible gods.
We're dependent on the physical universe and the laws of physics. Yes, we are dependent on something.
We're dependent on food and all sorts of needs.
If you want to call that God, then call it God. You know what I mean? Like, if God exists, then God is what the universe is, and we are moving by the necessity that God is in. And so what if God is in everything and God is in me? Well, guess what? God is not all powerful.
No. Okay, so you don't believe in a God that's all powerful. That's your visualization of God.
He doesn't need to be all powerful. He just, the thing is that it's not that I don't want him to be all powerful. I don't want him to be all powerful, but I don't need him, to be all powerful. And you don't see that all power in your lives. No, I'm sorry. Things don't just levitate and the laws of physics aren't broken. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen anything levitate on its own. I've never experienced any kind of physical phenomenon that has ever happened that didn't make sense through the laws of physics. And nobody's ever caught it on camera. No one's ever caught any of these supernatural phenomenon anywhere on camera. It's never been proven. And so I don't believe God is all powerful. I don't need God to be all powerful. He does enough. It's enough. I'm under enough control. If I don't need him to have any more power. It's enough. It's enough for me. And you need him to be all powerful because you need him to be able to be this intercessor and to come in and interfere for you in this world to help you.
No, I just think it goes against the definition of a God who depends on something else. Then the thing that
you've defined him that way.
No, I'm just saying
you defined God, and then you want him to be defined that way.
I'm saying, let's go by your idea that we could be gods, for example, or some version of us can be gods, right? Then we're dependent on something else. That's by nature. We already know we're dependent, right? So that's not like naturally an idea of God. The thing we're dependent on is more likely to be God than we are.
It's not. No, that's not. you made up a definition of God, and then you are telling me that it has to be that definition.
No, I'm saying that's the highest definition.
No,
No,
according
God
to you,
is no longer a God.
but no, God, I am dependent on the physical universe. You just don't like that answer. It's not that it doesn't make,
No, I
you just
like
don't
that
like the
answer.
answer. You don't
Okay,
like that. I'm dependent on the movement of the universe, which is God, which is uncreated. I don't need him to be outside the universe. I can be dependent on this universe.
So that means we agree. We agree that you're not God because you depend on a higher power which maintain you depend on nature, which is not just a dead system, but it's a system that keeps you alive. Okay, it's not an accidental system, it's a life support system. So it keeps you alive. So whatever controls nature, which
controls itself, it is controlled. Nothing controls nature. It's controlled. God is controlled.
Okay, cool. So your argument is that these systems manage themselves. There's no God of nature. I'm saying that we don't have that. There's no experience that lets us believe such an idea.
What experience? Excuse me. What do you mean no experience? I am under control of the laws of physics. I experience God every day. I experience God's control. God is controlled, and just as God is controlled, I am controlled. And it's just, I don't need God. God is self-sustaining outside the universe. Well, God can be self-sustaining inside the universe, and that I just believe in a God that's self-sustaining inside the universe, and that, you know, that's not some, you just made a definition of God that is not that, and then you say, well, that's not the definition of God. No,
I'm not saying. I'm just saying what makes sense for an idea of God.
It's not your definition of God.
Sure. So I'm saying my understanding of God is that if God is dependent on something else, then that something else becomes God rather than me, right? So that's my argument for human beings and any sort of evolution of human beings being God. The next thing is, why can't, even more fundamental, I suppose, is why God has to be supernatural, i.e. outside nature. Doesn't mean he can't somehow mingle. Okay, why necessarily? Because just like, say, I made this phone, right? I am not the phone, right? You are not your creation. So if there's a creation, which certainly I would argue nature is, the universe is nature, then God is not nature. He's not the same thing. He's beyond that. He's super
God
nature.
didn't really, God is there to say the universe is uncreated. No, God did not create the phone, but God is in the universe. So the creator and the created are the same. You see, you make a definition of God, and then you say anyone who doesn't believe in your definition of God has God wrong. Yes, God can be the creator and the created at the same time.
No, have you ever seen that? That's what I'm saying. Like, I've got a microphone. The microphone didn't create itself. It's not the creator and the creation. So I'm just saying, give me an example where you've ever seen such a thing.
Yeah, the universe itself. You're talking about some unnatural product that did not evolve on its own, that came through human intervention. The universe is not an unnatural product that, you know, could not have come into existence or could not have developed the way it has developed on its own. You're taking something that would not have developed naturally, and you're relating it to the natural development of the universe. And
so you're saying natural things have their own special rules that we can't understand. They're more magical.
No, they're not. No, I didn't say that they're more magical. I'm just saying that I'm saying that, well, I'm also saying God is the creator and the created, and he is predestined to become both. He's predestined by the laws of the universe to become both. God is there for one purpose and one purpose only, to make the universe, the physical universe, uncreated, or then God and the universe were created at the same time. Then what, I don't see why God could be uncreated. It's magic. God can be totally uncreated and never have had a beginning. Maybe at a beginning. I don't. Why couldn't he have a beginning? Why? That's not good enough for you because you have an opinion of yourself personally that's not good enough for me for God to have had a beginning. You personally say that's not good enough for me. That's not science or rationalism or anything like that. It's your personal opinion. And I'm saying, well, even if the universe did have a beginning, then God is the universe. So God in the universe had a beginning and came in at the same time. That's no more illogical than to say God is immaterial outside space and time and had no beginning. There's nothing there. One is not more illogical than the other.
Okay. I mean, actually, I'm going to get back to that. Like at the end, I'm going to try to, when we wrap up, is like, what's the easiest belief way to envisage God? I think we'll come to that. What's
according to
like according to you, even like anybody, like what's the easiest idea? We were talked about it in a second, but I just want to go to the last part of this chapter. And says there is nothing comparable to God, right? And I think that's a necessary definition of God, because as soon as you start defining God in any way, that God is a cat or a mouse or whatever, then you limit God according to your imagination, but not just according to your imagination, but according to what it can do. So, for example, if you say God is a mouse, then you've limited God to time and space, for example. So if you say God is human, you've limited God to time and space as well.
Yeah, I know. And I don't have a problem with that. Mormons don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't think white people are going to have a big problem with that. And I want to go back to what you had just said right before.
Because you can't be, if you're a God who's managing the whole universe, how can you manage the whole universe, be everywhere at the same time if you're physical?
You're not. According to the Mormon God, you're not. And that's good enough for them. They don't need your definition. They don't need to think like you. And they just don't need that. And the thing is that you said you want what's easy, and what's easy, you think what's the easiest to believe? No,
yeah,
I mean, you have to believe in something, and it's not going to be something you can prove. So why not make it something? The white way is to make it about science and to focus on science, and the non-white way is for God to be outside.
You said the white way. I thought you were saying the right way.
Yes, but you want something other than science to think about because that's easy.
I'm going to check. Are you saying the white way or the right way? Like, because you were talking about a white God.
Both.
Like, okay.
Okay. Both. And the white culture was destroyed by Christianity, but I have to say that the remnant is that Jesus is God. God did take physical. The place that they get it wrong is that God is not all physical creation. It's only one physical creation, but that one physical creation at least kept the white race enough with God being physical.
What is this one physical creation you're talking about? Are you talking about God, right?
No, I'm talking about in Christianity, Jesus is one physical creation. No, in Christianity, only one physical object is God. Only one physical object is God, whereas everything else is not God. You know, revert in what the old white polytheistic materialistic way was, that everything was God.
Right.
Okay. But Christianity, because Christianity has a lot of white influence in it, and so they needed that God man in there.
Why do you say Christianity? Because Christianity is like the most awkward scenario because they believe in 3 in 1. They don't really their idea of
but you know that quantum physics. I don't believe.
Why don't you stick with? No, I'm just saying, if you had to pick a belief that said there's one God, why not pick either Judaism or Islam? Because if you're going to go to Christianity, it just makes it really worse. Nobody believes in 3 in 1. 3 does not equal 1.
Well, quantum.
So forget Christianity.
Okay, well, first of all, I do not believe quantum physics proves the Trinity, but the only reason I don't believe that is because I don't believe our perception of quantum physics is true. I think that there's something going on there that we're not understanding, but the way quantum physics seems, like looking at it just like without thinking deeply about it, could the Trinity be true? Yes, they have scientific arguments for many being one and one being many, and I don't really believe that's what's going on. You have to be a skeptic. You have to be a skeptic in order to, not believe that. But if you're not a skeptic, then the Trinity is not that outrageous anymore. I'm a quantum physics skeptic, so I'm not going to believe in the Trinity. But if you just adopt it and accept it as it is the Trinity so absurd? No, it's not.
Okay, so I mean, just to answer, Guy Prolly, why if you believe in one God, why don't you believe in a second God or something? I'm saying we've already gone through that. There's an ultimate cause to all causes. It's a reasonable idea.
According to you.
Yeah, I'd say it's reasonable. Like, okay, so what
Not
I
for
mentioned
everyone.
just
I don't believe in it. I mean, it's obvious that
exactly, that's why I've got you here to give the alternative ideas, right? And everybody else can make their own decision. But just to wrap up, say we're simplifying the universe to the phone again, right? Okay. Now, if we had to make a theory of how did the phone come about, okay, would you say that somebody made it, or they were part of it? There was one creator, or there was, if there was a million creators, right? Was there one organizer who planned everything and
no, there
said this
doesn't
is
need to
what's
be an
going in the phone?
organizer. They got along. They were cooperative. They were the thing is that the dark races can't cooperate together because you're so fucking arrogant. So there had to have only been one god because you wouldn't have been able to create it as a fucking committee. You cannot contemplate polytheism because you're like, I'm such a fucking asshole. I couldn't have worked with other people to create this universe. So God must be a fucking asshole, and there can only be one of him. And that's disgusting. And that's why I hate your monotheism. I really do.
I
Because
like
God
the
had to be a
passion.
fucking asshole. It couldn't have been a bunch of nice gods that all cooperated together and worked together and got along, because you can't do that.
Yeah, interesting idea. Okay, so I would say in any company you normally have one person who decides, yes, that's going in. We're going with 5G in this phone. No, there will be too many arguments if we didn't. So there's to be one creator. He's not part of his God. So if you're making a phone, you're not going to become the phone. What else was there in the Quran? So the phone is dependent on its existence on something else, so therefore it cannot be God itself.
Both
So
of which
anyway,
are physical. The phone is
yeah.
dependent upon a physical God. So why can't we be dependent on a physical God too? Okay, so a physical man made a physical phone, so a physical God can make a physical person.
That phone was created by the destruction of Western industrial infrastructure. By the way, Guy Prolly, Claire tells me that you are somebody called Snork or something. I shouldn't mispronounce your. I'm not into that area. We should have a live stream at some point. I'll get in contact with you, right? Anyway, so destruction of Western industrial infrastructure and many hands of people who never in 1,000 years would have discovered how to build it. It is a mystery. I'm not
I
sure.
don't know
Did you
what that
understand that?
means. Can you answer why a physical
Go on.
person made a physical phone, so why can't a physical God make a physical person? And why can't, if God is the universe, why can't God be the creator and the created? Why? Like, who said that? Like, who made up that rule?
Okay, so I'll take the second one because I understood the second bit, and then you'll have to repeat the first one you made. So why can't you be the creator and the created? Because I've never seen that ever happen before. Like my mom is not
But
me.
you're the same. The substance is God. The substance itself. You are substance. It is substance. Substance is God. So they're both God.
So the problem with that is that you need infinite substance to create all this other substance called
No,
the universe.
yeah, there
It would
is infinite
be crazy.
substance. Well,
Oh,
it's
you
just
mean it
easy.
be
Just like
recycled substance?
infinite God. It just like there's infinite God. There's infinite God substance. There's infinite God substance.
Claire
You
says the
ask
carpenter cannot be the chair. Sorry,
if
she's
there
just
no,
more
because
funny than I am.
you just don't want material to be God. So you're saying because I don't want material to be God, the carpenter and the chair can't be the same thing. But if material's God to you, then it's fine. It makes
Sure.
sense.
And what was your argument before that? So you said something
That a
like
physical God, if a physical person can make a physical phone, then a physical God can make a physical person.
a physical card can make a physical phone.
Oh no, a physical person can make a physical phone, so a
Yeah.
physical God can make a physical person.
So you're saying if something, the creation is physical, therefore the creator must be physical, maybe.
Or can be.
Or can be. Yeah, it's possible that it can be. Um, there are lots of non-physical things. I don't know. I'm not
When we
sure.
say
That's
even energy is like, whenever I say physical, I mean the universe, energy, space, time, matter, waves, particles, you know, all that.
Yeah, so I don't know how to encapsulate God, but like you pointed out energy, which is kind of an answer, because if people have heard of E equals MC squared, not that I know much about relativity and all that kind of stuff, Einstein stuff, but basically all mass can turn into energy. So there you go. There's a possible answer that the physical universe came from a non-physical thing called energy. And what is energy? Maybe
And no,
God.
energy is, I mean, energy actually is like a vibration or a wave. It's actually something you can detect. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. It's
Okay.
not immaterial. It's not outside space and time. It's in
Well, I
this
think by
universe.
its own definition, if it was so mass is what we call material. Energy is separated in that equation as something
It's
else.
in this universe. It's in this universe. It's
Sure.
not
Okay. Sure.
outside space and time.
Yeah.
It's in this
All right.
universe.
Okay.
It's in
Cool.
here. It's something that can be detected with a machine.
Guy Prolly's a regular. I'm sure I've seen him lots of times. Anyway, first of all, thank you very much, Vincent. Really appreciate that. You gave a lot of counter arguments as powerfully as anybody can give, all the possible ideas. I value that because that's the whole point of the discussion, not me talking to myself and repeating my own arguments. It's really important to hear the other side of the arguments. And I think you listed so many alternative arguments. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you taking time out. It's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah, I just want to say that anyone who's listening, white people choose materialistic polytheism because focused on science, destroy the enemy. They're going to be thinking about metaphysics. We're going to be thinking about physics. I think we know who's going to win.
Cool. And so Guy Prolly, I think is he? Do you know Guy Prolly who's snork? I'm gonna keep mispronouncing your other username, but I think he's a white supremacist. Like we need a way, white people, to beat the brown people because we're just doing too good. We need to figure out a solution. I'll help you. All right. So because I don't want white people to die out because white people like brown people like white people to mate with and stuff like that. We just like
Yeah,
opposites
that's
attract.
horrible. You just want our women. You just want us. I mean, you want to destroy our
I
race
know,
by just
but like,
sleeping
I
with
don't
us.
want you guys to die out though, because then
No,
I would
but
have
you
no
want to sleep
choice.
with us, and you want you
Yeah,
first
that's true.
you steal us, and then you call us racist. I cannot tell you how many brown people
We're all
marry a white
racist.
person, and then you call us racist. Why
We're
did you
all
marry
racist.
us
It's
then?
biology. It's biology.
Why did you
That's what I'm saying.
marry
I don't
us?
want you white
Why
people
did
to
you
die
marry
out.
us? Why did you come here to marry us if we're so racist? Why? To call us racist so that you
I don't
like
know. I'm not calling. I'm calling myself racist.
yeah,
I'm
but
saying we're
I
all
mean, but like
biologically
you know,
racist.
if you think we're
It's
so
not a bad
racist, then
thing.
stay
It's only
away
if you
from
treat
us.
people badly, then it's bad
If you think
racism.
we're so racist, stay away from us. Don't come here and mate with us and call us racist while you're mating with
I'm
us.
calling brown people are way more racist. Like
Yeah, I know they are.
we have adverts for turning brown people into white people with skin cream. And that'll be illegal in the West, those adverts. So we're way more racist. I'm not saying anything about racism is a bad thing.
Well, all right.
Unless you treat people badly. We love treating white people really well. It's like, oh, white people, yay. Do you know what I mean? So
No,
anyway.
you very much dislike us and talk
But
very
see,
poorly about us.
you guys are killing yourselves off with your ideas. It's like these ideas
Well,
that don't work.
use
I'm going to
materialism
save
to
you guys.
get these babies coming out. I'm telling you, artificial wombs and surrogates and
See,
all that.
that's the kind of idea that's not going to work. You'd be dead by the time that comes out.
No,
I'm going to
excuse me,
save
I
you,
know, but you're
Vincent.
not white. You cannot see it being created in the next 10, 15 years. You're just brown. And so, like, new technology is not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
All technology companies are run by brown people anyway.
No,
So,
well, that's why we're collapsing.
yeah.
That's why
Anyway.
civilization is going down the drain.
Yeah.
That's why we're going down the drain.
Okay, what's this last one? Because it just said Gay Vincent, makes me laugh already. Gay Vincent, you have read Encountering Mystery Religions, blah, blah, blah. You keep talking about the same book. Maybe I have to look at it. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We're going to keep doing this. We're talking about Mormons next time, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll talk about Mormons.
Cool. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody in the chat as well.